The time is now 7 p.m. Is it possible to, we're just going to call the meeting to order. I'm just going to adjust my screen so I can see all of council. That's everybody's here. I can see everybody. Excellent. We're live streaming on YouTube and through the webcast. So with that, I will call the meeting to order. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of council. Today is Monday, April the 26th. As we gather today, we just want to acknowledge that we're gathering on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish people, specifically the Lekwungen-speaking people, known today as the Songhees and the Esquimalt Nations, and that their connections to these lands continue to this day. Up first, we have approval of the agenda. I get a mover, and is there a seconder? Second, thank you. Any changes, corrections, or anything else to do with the agenda? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you. We have adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of April the 12th, moved by Councillor Braithwaite, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Thank you. Any discussion, changes, corrections to those minutes? Not seeing any hands shoot up. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. That carries. We just need to move receipt of the Heritage Commission meetings of September 15th, 2020, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. Then 4.2 Advisory Design Panel for November 3rd, 2020, moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. And then 4.3 Committee of the Whole. We'll do all of them, February 4th, 11th, 18th, and March 1st. For moved and seconded. Are there any corrections, changes, additions anybody wishes to see on any of those? Not seeing any hands up. I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. My mayor's remarks will be brief. I do want to just let people know that the province is asking, they're doing a second round of a public survey to see the impact of COVID on people's lives. So they've announced that, they've asked that we propagate and amplify their requests to the public, that people participate in that so they can get a better sense from people in all walks of life, how the COVID is affecting them. I just and I'll just reiterate as well the more broader public health requests to keep your distances, to only meet outside, to only meet at tables in restaurants with your immediate circles, etc. Those rules are still in effect, and obviously, as we're fighting this wave, it's important that people do every part they can for that. And that's really it I have for today, but I just want to express my appreciation for all the people who are doing all the right things. I was at the beach the other day, and one of the hot days, and it was a lot of people, one of the busiest days I've ever seen on the beach, and people were really being good about their distancing, staying in their groups. The occasional group of young people was maybe not quite so adherent, but it was overall really, really well done. So I just want to express my appreciation to the municipality for that. Up item number 6, we have reports and memorandums. These are us to consider and move them in whatever direction council wishes. They're not subject to public input, but we do have speakers attached to these applications that I will invite to address us if there's any questions of council. And maybe I'll just this is the first one up is a development variance permit. And as you know, we've changed our DVP process to where the public input is. So I thought I would just invite, before we get to the actual individual applications, there's only one variance permit. I thought I would invite Mr. Anderson just to remind us what that process is going forward, as we have this one in front of us right now. Mr. Anderson, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can council hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, the item we do have before us involves both an upland siting and design application and a development variance permit application. You may recall in the past, we basically brought these forward and they were bundled together, and we had consideration of the upland siting and then consideration of the variance permit. And that would have been giving notice. What we've done is to have this clear that the variance needs to be considered first. And the first step in the process along this way is that the notice is given on the development variance permit, and the residents have an opportunity to come and provide comments when council considers this at the second juncture, which is where you would consider both the development variance permit, public input, and the advisory design panel's recommendation for the upland siting and design application. So it's a little different, but it's procedurally the way we should be going, and it puts the sequence in the right order. And you're really considering whether to give notice on the variance permit tonight, and it's at the next meeting that you'd be considering whether to approve the upland siting and design and the development variance permit. So this evening, around the variance, you do have the opportunity to give staff direction to give notice or to not approve the development variance permit. So those options are presented to you at the end of the report, but I just thought you'd let you know that you have the option of giving direction on notice or at this juncture not approving the variance permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. And just for a little explanation of why we're trying to make sure that people that we give notice when we're expecting people to come and talk to us, and that we make it clear in the rules where we're expecting that input, so that there isn't sort of people coming to multiple meetings wondering when they can speak to something, as has happened in the past. So thank you for that overview. And up first, we have item 6.1, which is, as you said, the item upland siting and design for 3125 Weald Road. And tonight we have Ms. Jensen, our manager of planning, to give a brief overview.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just confirm that you can hear me.
We can, thank you.
Great, thank you, Your Worship. This property is located at the corner of Weald Road and Lansdowne Road. So that's where the original home was constructed in 1923. The applicant is now proposing to undertake renovations to the home, primarily with the introduction of a larger deck at the rear of the home and an expansion of the attached garage. So a flat roof is being used to replace what's there on the garage to minimize its visual appearance and reduce any conflicts with the architectural style of the home. Similarly, a simple deck design is proposed, which would also minimize any impacts to the character of the existing home. As mentioned, one of the components of this proposal is the expansion of the attached garage along the northerly portion of the site. And because of the original siting of the building, expansion of that garage necessitates a variance to the interior side lot line. So while the addition has been designed to minimize the encroachment through its actual structure, the existing condition would still trigger a 0.01 meter setback, which reflects the existing building. The advisory design panel reviewed this proposal at their April meeting and noted that the proposed works are an appropriate modification given the original character of the home, and did recommend that council consider approving both the siting and design and the requested variance as presented. Staff review of the application notes that, as with the design panel, the overall siting and design of the proposal is supportable. There are no conflicts with the Uplands design guidelines, and the variance request will help to retain the architectural lines of the home and retain a connection with the adjacent Porte Cochet. Because of the significant screening on the site, there should be minimal impact to the adjacent neighbors nor to the streetscape. As Mr. Anderson mentioned, the development variance permit and the upland siting and design applications are running concurrently. So should council wish to move the applications forward, staff would proceed with written notification of the development variance application to all properties within a 50-meter radius. The proposal would then come back to the May 10th council meeting for consideration of any public input and a final resolution. And with that, staff are requesting council direction as to the options outlined in the report.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jensen. And I will point out that I believe we have Mr. Nigel Banks, who is the designer on this project, available. But so if there's questions that staff can't answer or that would be better suited by the designer, then we can call him in as well. So with that, are there any questions from council to staff or the applicant? We seem to have a fair bit of clarity then on this. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I guess I have some difficulty with some of these applications. And so since we have our planners here and we also have the architect here, I guess what I'm wondering is how just for an explanation of how development where the lot in Uplands, where we have a heritage recognition for pioneering urban development, how development where a lot has a building and sports court that predominates the lot and just has a perimeter of trees, how it meets the criteria of maintaining a park-like setting. So that's one of the questions I have. And then I read the arborist report on this, and I know that frequently what has happened in my own neighborhood is when construction has occurred, the trees have survived the construction, but within 2 to 3 years have then died. And I suppose I know that there is a fee and replacement requirement for removal of trees, even if they have died. So I suppose that would cover it. But if somebody could just perhaps briefly explain those things, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I'm not, Ms. Jensen, are you able to talk a little bit about the landscaping portion of the setting and design?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So interestingly enough, we received this application back in 2018. So the applicants have been working on a number of revisions since that was initially submitted. But what that means is that the tree protection bylaw, which was adopted last year, was not in effect when that application was received. So the requirement to achieve the 45% tree canopy cover would not have applied to this particular proposal. Having said that, because they do have a lot of overlapping canopy cover already on the site, we do expect that as those trees continue to mature, that they would reach that required 45% tree canopy cover. To Councillor Patterson's point regarding the rear of the property and the court setting in the rear of the property, that particular structure, those kinds of structures don't actually require a building permit or other forms of approval from council, as they're not a structure, a building, so they don't trigger that upland siting and design review. So I don't know when that court went into place, but it's not something that the district would have seen as part of our review process for upland siting and design. So because the applicant is not planning on removing any of the existing trees, we do expect that what we have in place already with the mature screening will continue to apply to that park-like setting for this particular site.
Thank you, Ms. Jensen. Councillor Patterson?
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Can we get a motion? I just want to make clear there's a bit of a typo in the motion that says 3125 Beach Drive. It should read, it's correct in the report in the top, but the recommendation there says 3125 Beach. It should say 3125 Wheeled Road as part of the motion, just so we're clear. Councillor Green?
I'll move the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. So for anybody watching and not following, it's just to receive the report and to give notice of this consideration to the neighbors. I don't see any other discussion questions. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for not ripping this house down.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. All those in any other discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. Thank you very much. So notice will be given, and that will come back to a future committee of the whole. Up next, we have item 6.2, and thank you, Mr. Banks, for attending today. I think it's always nice to have that available to us. Item number 6.2, we have upland siting and design for 3175 Exeter Road. Back to you, Ms. Jensen, our manager of planning.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this particular property lies along the east side of Exeter Road, just a slight ways north of Lansdowne. The owner is proposing to replace the existing home with a new single-story home, with the original home having been constructed in 1958. So drawing on a contemporary style, the building will incorporate quality materials, including painted fiber cement, acrylic stucco, stone veneer, and an asphalt shingle roof. Council did actually previously see this property back in 2018, where they approved a larger house design for the site. The proposal is now back with a new design where they're proposing a smaller single-family home that will also result in the removal of less trees. So we're proposing 4 trees removed for this application versus the 8 that were proposed for removal in 2018. 6 replacement trees will be required, and overall the site will achieve a 45% tree canopy cover. The advisory design panel reviewed the application also at their April meeting and were generally supportive of the application. They did make note of various design elements, including garage massing, window variation, and design of the front entrance. But overall, they did determine that the proposal complies with the Uplands design guidelines and provided a recommendation to consider approving the application.
Thank you very much. There are some, thank you. It's just somebody had their mute button go off. Thank you very much, Ms. Jensen. Are there any, and I believe we don't have anybody here for this application to the best of my knowledge, but I will make that ask if there's any questions of council that would be helped by an applicant. Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to ask, it doesn't seem to say it as part of the recommendations for the motion. Will notice be going out to the public for a development such as this?
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. The answer is no. At this point, the variance permit is going out for notice. All of the rest of these are just siting and design, which are just in the purview of council.
So then a follow-up question, is there a sign out front to let the neighbors know that there'll be a change in terms of what was approved versus this house?
Sure. Ms. Jensen, perhaps you best suited to explain the process for on-site notification.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, there is a requirement in the Uplands Regulation Bylaw that all proposals that are going through this process, signage must be posted, in fact, prior to a meeting of the Advisory Design Panel and then, of course, prior to the council meeting.
Thank you very much. So I understand there's a sign out the front right now, basically letting people know that this meeting is happening. I just wanted to confirm that that's the case. And thank you so much.
Sure, thank you. I just to be clear, I don't think that our signage on the site specifies a date of meeting. I think it just notifies the public that there's an application into council. Ms. Jensen, can you just confirm that?
That's correct. It basically notifies that there is a proposal happening on the site. It does not give specific dates for meetings.
All right, well, thank you very much. And I also wanted to say a sincere thanks to staff, a very well-written report and very easy to understand. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. Just, I think this is a structural question, or just sort of almost a housekeeping question, but in terms of evaluating the scope of tree removal on the site, I just have a question about, like, if we make reference to the site plan has typical components on it in terms of the dimensions of the trees which are to be removed. The trees that are marked, have dimensions of the trees which are to be retained. The trees that are slated for removal don't include dimensions, nor are they referred to in the arborist report or anywhere else that I can see. And so I'm just kind of wondering, what is our standard as far as in terms of submissions like this and materials that come before council? Is it possible for those dimensions of the trees to be removed, to be included? Because I think depending on what the scope and scale is there, it bears on the decision making. So I guess I'm just kind of wondering about standards for inclusion of information.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Ms. Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can certainly provide you some information with respect to the size of the trees that are proposed for removal on this site. Out of those, we do have 3 Gary oaks that are basically ranging in size from 29 centimeter diameter breast height through to 51 centimeters. And then there's an additional camellia tree that's also being removed. With respect to the specifics that we ask for when we're considering an application, much of the information that we receive is then directly referred to our Parks Department for consideration as part of their review of the tree protection bylaw. Having said that, I'm not sure whether Mr. Anderson would like to provide some additional information.
Mr. Anderson has his hand up, so I'll assume that's a yes. Welcome, Mr. Anderson, who's our Director of Building and Planning.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, just a supplementary comment regarding Ms. Jensen's. Council typically does not see, I guess, the detail around trees that are within the scope of a building permit that allows, and the tree bylaw that allows for trees to be removed within the building envelope. So I'm not sure if, again, within the scope of council's decision-making on advisory design panel or upland siting and design, pardon me, they're really, I think from staff's perspective, providing the tree diameters of trees that are being removed according to our bylaws is perhaps not the level of information that council may need from our perspective to make that decision, but I guess I'd leave that for some guidance respecting that. If it's not particularly the building envelope that you're referring to, Councillor Upperton, then I'd appreciate maybe if there's any further clarification for us on that. Thanks.
Councillor Upland.
Could I elaborate? Thank you, Worship.
ahead.
And through you to staff, thank you for that. I guess the reason I make that comment is because we're dealing specific, and I understand very clearly, and I understand, thank you for that, that, you know, if something is permitted under the bylaw, I understand the removal parameters. What we're talking about here is specifically related to upland siting and design. And so because council does have some direct input as far as the design and literally the siting of development in the uplands, combined with the fact that we have houses and developments of significant scope, very, in some cases, very large scope, and a very mature tree canopy. I think it behooves council, or at least in my opinion, it behooves council to evaluate whether or not the scope and the siting of a given development has an adverse effect on significant size trees, and whether or not the siting could be potentially modified or tweaked in order to, if there's an opportunity to modify the siting in a way that doesn't significantly alter the development in order to retain more trees, that would be my objective. So I understand that what constitutes a significant size tree, that the sheer, you know, the DBH size of a tree is not necessarily the only guideline that determines whether or not something's a significant tree or not. It factors into my decision making anyway, as far as upland siting and design situations.
Thank you, Councillor Upland. I think that is certainly one of those considerations that we have taken into account in the past, where there's been a significant tree and asked to move houses slightly left or right or forward or back to see if there's a compromise that would allow for that retention. So it probably should be included in the reports, if either in the probably just in the arborist report rather than requiring it in the plans, because I think there's a lack of consistency in the type and quality of the plans that we receive.
I would agree with that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Councillor Braithwaite, and then Green.
Thank you. And thanks to Councillor Appleton for bringing that up, because that is something that's important to me as well. And we have discussed it over the years I've been on council. So it's good to keep that at top of mind. I do have one quick question to staff, since I don't believe there's anybody here to speak to this, this item. But on page 7 of the plans, I noticed that on the top right-hand or top left-hand side, it says front yard hard surface calculation and rear yard hard surface calculation. But under the rear yard one, it says area of front yard. And then it doesn't have any hard surface proposed. So I think that's a typo probably. It should say area of backyard on the plans. It's not our staff's fault, obviously. But then is it correct that there's no hard surface proposed? Because when I looked at the plans, it looks like, unless that's just considered a deck and it's not considered hard surface.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. You're looking at the page that has the big green box?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I believe it comes up as page 7 on our.
That's right. Yeah. Ms. Jensen, can you just perhaps comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So paved surface, that when we talk about the paved surface calculations for either the front yard or the backyard, it's essentially talking to that area that's between the property line and whatever that setback measurement might be for that rear yard. So if it was a 10-meter setback for the front yard, we're talking about from the property line to that 10-meter mark. Similarly, the rear yard. So in this particular instance, talking to the rear yard, they are proposing no paved surface, no paved surface within that setback area. The patio area would be outside of that.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Braithwaite, for that. That helped clarify for me as well. Councillor Green, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to quickly comment on the comments of my colleagues, Councillors Appleton, Patterson, and Braithwaite around the tree issue and canopies. And also, I think it speaks to the point that Councillor Patterson raised earlier this evening, and that's related to the park-like setting definition. And I think we really do have to be cognizant of that. And I also think we have some new members on the ADP, and they're concerned as well about sustainability. And I think we have to start putting that lens on some of this work, I think perhaps more strongly than we have in the past, particularly in the context of climate change and sustainability generally, and the goals that we have established for Oak Bay. So I just want to acknowledge their important contributions tonight on that issue. And I think it will become more and more prominent as time goes on. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. We have drifted off the specific application a little bit, but I will just, if there's any other questions related to this application, I want to just appreciate that. It sounded like I was criticizing the comment. I think they're really important for us to clarify the rules around park-like setting. So I don't want to not deal with that. I just want to make sure we move the meeting forward as well. So thank you. Any other discussion on this item? We just need a motion.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? I'm not seeing any. I'm just going to say that I actually really appreciate the scale of this house. I think it actually fits very nicely and using up much less space than is actually required. It's actually true of most of the applications tonight. It's nice to see. We've seen a lot of houses maxed out in the last few years, and it's nice to see some houses that are being built to a human scale. So thank you for that to the applicant. Any other discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Item number 6.3, also an upland siting and design. This is for 3115 Beach Drive. And I'll go to Ms. Jensen again for this. And for this, we do have, I believe, the architects and the owner available for questions on this application as well. So we'll invite them to speak in a bit, but I'm just going to let the staff do the introduction, and we'll take some questions from council as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And for greater clarity and with council's indulgence, the next two upland siting and design applications are immediately adjacent and held by the same property owner. As a comprehensive approach to the siting and design that has been proposed, I would like to present both applications together. These two sites are larger properties located along Beach Drive. 3115 Beach is located at the northeast corner of Beach Drive and Rutland Road. And then 3125 Beach is located directly north, extending through from Beach Drive to the waterfront. Located on 3125 Beach, which is the larger of the two sites, is the existing single-family home with numerous outbuildings. The applicant is proposing to remove the home and a number of these accessory buildings and construct a new home with similar siting to the existing house. The home itself has been designed in a style that's reminiscent of the original homes constructed in this area. Architectural design reflects East Coast influences, and quality materials have been incorporated into the design to include white cedar shingles, round fieldstone veneer, and a red cedar roof. As a more comprehensive undertaking, the owner is also proposing to construct a single-family home on the adjacent, currently vacant lot at 3115 Beach. While using similar quality materials in its construction and still respecting the architectural character of the original neighborhood, the home at 3115 Beach does have distinct differences in its roof form and fenestration, and provides for other decorative elements as well. These two proposed homes then present differences in design and massing, and neither are similar to other existing homes within the immediate neighborhood. The site itself will retain much of its mature landscaping, including the stone walls that run along both properties. 3125 Beach will see the introduction of 46 trees to achieve a 47% tree canopy cover, and 3115 Beach will be planted with 27 trees, resulting in a 45% tree canopy cover. So that brings the total coverage up on the sites from 25% to 47% and 20% to 45% respectively on both of those sites. Also reviewed at the April meeting of the advisory design panel, the panel did note that the proposed construction on both sites is being built to a high standard and the overall design is well balanced. As such, the panel recommended that council consider approval of the proposed works on both 3115 and 3125 Beach Drive. Staff also reviewed the applications with respect to site characteristics and fit within the neighborhood. The homes are located in such a way to enhance the park-like setting and mitigate impacts to mature landscaping. The siting and design of the proposals are compliant with OCP policy and uplands design guidelines, and all zoning bylaw requirements are met. All heights and setbacks are adhered to, and no variances are required. The applicant, Peter Johannknecht, is in attendance this evening, one of the architects on the file, as is the owner, Don Matrick. Should council have any questions, and staff are requesting council direction.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ms. Jensen. And I have no issue with us talking about these two as they are at least somewhat related, and I'm sure questions will probably apply across both. So before I'll just take any questions that the council may have to either to the staff or to the applicants at this time. I don't see any hands. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite, and then Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I would like Ms. Jensen perhaps just to touch a little bit on some of the differences, because I have to be honest, when I look at these two proposals, they do look very similar to me. So perhaps we can just talk, and I think a lot of that is based on the materials that are going to be used. So perhaps you can just touch on some of the things that really are different between these two proposals.
Certainly, Ms. Jensen, do you wish to answer that, or would you rather prefer I have Mr. Johannknecht join us to answer those questions?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would suggest that the architect would be better to discuss some of the specific details.
I agree. I think that's probably appropriate. Mr. Johannknecht, sorry, I always stumble over your name the first couple times I say it. I'll get better. But welcome to our meeting, and nice to hear your voice again.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Good evening. Pleasure to be here, and happy to provide some answers and more clarity. And yeah, just like Ms. Jensen said, like I'm part of a quite elaborate team that has worked on these two applications for over 2 years actually, and probably even longer, and really to take the time to recognize that this is quite a unique property in Oak Bay, both together, 3.5 acres of land, and really to achieve a legacy project for the owners who have owned this for over 20 years and are planning to be here for many years. And so a lot of thought and work has been put into this application to comply with all the zoning guidelines and bylaws. And so just want to emphasize the labor and work that has really been put in here. And part of it is the design in itself, and creating actually properties and buildings that are speaking and relate to each other, yet are quite different in a lot of details. For example, like 3125 is a classical H-shaped gambrel roof form. And so like the coastal architecture reminiscent of the original cottages, as Ms. Jensen had mentioned earlier already, that have been placed and are still seen in parts of the uplands. And 3115 is a much smaller structure that reads as a secondary element in relation to 3125. And in addition, 3115 is comprised primarily of multiple gable forms not found in 3125's architecture. The one gambrel form that is part of 3115's architectural massing is entirely different than the gambrel forms found in 3125's architecture. 3115's gambrel form significantly differs in that the chords are of different sizes, and the eaves at 3115 are oversailing, whereas at 3125 the eaves are actually flush with the face of the structure. So there are a lot of subtle differences between those two buildings, how they're faced, but also in between those two buildings is a landscape, a park-like landscape, and space of over 130 feet, I believe, 137, I think, to be exact. So there's a lot of space, and you will never see necessarily these flat elevations that you see maybe in front of the application, as part of the application. So there's a lot of mature landscaping and different architectural elements that really differentiate those two, but they're like siblings.
Yeah, and I if I may, Mayor,
Go ahead.
I guess that's where my concern is, because I think in the uplands, I believe the rule is that there has to be, and there can't be anything similar within 500 feet, I believe, of each other. So I'm just kind of struggling a little bit as to whether they're, even though they're siblings, perhaps they're almost like conjoined twins. Rather
Well, Mayor, if possible, I'm the owner who kind of kicked this off. So the creative brief that we started with was on 3125, a seaside house, which is the H form that Peter spoke to. 3115 is actually a barn derivative. So I don't we started with full awareness that we needed to come up with two different creative products to adhere to the Uplands Design Council. And as Peter shared, we spent over 2 years iterating and working to find something that's complementary, but distinctly different.
Thank you, Mr. Matrick. Just to introduce you for those who don't know. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite, were there follow-up questions?
I think I'll let other people ask and then I'll come back to me.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. With respect to 3125 Beach, this is very much in line with what I've previously asked, but there's two significant sized Gary Oaks targeted for removal on the site plan. This is on page 35 of the council package as we've received it. And I'm just wondering whether or not we can get some information on just the dimensions of those two Gary Oaks that are essentially immediately to the west of the main residence. The site plan isn't in at enough resolution that I can really get the detail on those two trees.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Ms. Jensen?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Appleton is correct. There are two Gary oak trees that are proposed for removal. Those two range in size from 43 to 65 centimeters. Some of them are multi-trunk, so there's a range of size in there.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Are there any other questions of council? Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to ask questions about both properties. One has quite an extensive waterfront, and I just wanted to confirm, especially with the owner and architect in attendance, that there will be no disturbance down at the water area, and that there's no impact with respect to any aspects of the water line.
Sure, I'll just go to Ms. Jensen, since it's covered under the shoreline DPA. So if there are any changes there, the staff would be able to articulate how those fit within that. Ms. Jensen?
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, that is one of the conversations that we have had with the applicants since they initially broached the proposals to happen on this site. And that is correct. There is no activity proposed within that Shorelines Development Permit area.
Very much appreciate that. And if there was to be a change to that, I presume the staff would be made aware of it. We wouldn't want to have a repeat of what had happened in other parts of Oak Bay where things changed halfway through. Just wanted to sort of say that out loud so that anyone coming before council who has such a lovely property as this knows that we have a development permit area down by the water. So I the secondary question, if I may, both properties do seem to have rather a bit of a barn-like look to them. I see Councillor Braithwaite's query around this. There's definitely a barn-like quality to both of them. And I understand there's a slightly difference on the eaves, but I was wondering if maybe the architect could speak a little bit more to how these are different enough that they satisfy the requirements for differences under our bylaws, please.
Sure, and I'll invite Mr. Yakinek to speak to that, but also if he could maybe reflect also anything. I'm sure this conversation happened at the design panel as well, and if Councillor Green, who's the liaison, might want to also chip in, but I won't put her on the spot if she doesn't want to. But go ahead, Mr. Yakinek.
Yeah, like I think just in addition to what I had mentioned earlier, I think we have to recognize that the 500-foot rule is for properties that will be seen actually from the public realm, and along Beach Drive, both of these houses will actually not be seen, and from the water you can only see one, which is 3125. 3115 is completely behind the other property. So I think we have to keep that in mind. This is a unique property where there's a lot of screening happening along Beach Drive, and that is all carefully maintained, for that purpose for many, many years. And so the owners value the existing landscaping very much. And in addition to that, actually add, I believe, 46 new trees, also following the new tree bylaw of achieving that 45% tree coverage. So that is quite significant, and a contribution to the tree canopy within Oak Bay.
Thank you very much. Councillor Green, if you want to add anything, you're welcome to, and I'll go to Mr. Anderson, who also has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. And I was wondering if anyone would have questions or would like further information. I will tell you that I was at the meeting where these two applications were considered, and the comments were very positive from the entire design panel. They were commended, the team was commended for their design vision. They were commended for their disaster, post-disaster plan and flooding mitigation plan. And the word used was that it was impressive. So this was considered by everyone an impressive proposal, both properties. And to Councillor Braithwaite's point, that was raised simply as a question by one of the panel members. But I think that the architect has covered that off this evening. But it was very, very enthusiastically, I would say enthusiastically welcomed by the ADP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Mr. Anderson, your hand has gone down again now. Did you wish to speak to that at all?
Yes, just briefly, Your Worship, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the 500-foot rule. It's there in the place of a new house, and as it relates to existing houses, it may be a nuance for some, but that is in fact the direct application of that. It's measuring against existing homes. Hope that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. I have hands up from. I'm going to go to Councillor Patterson, who's asking questions for the first time, and then I have Councillor Zelka, Appleton, and then Braithwaite.
I hadn't finished my questions.
Oh, I apologize, Councillor Zelka. I will stay with you then. Go ahead.
I much appreciate that. Thank you. Two more quick questions, if I may. if staff and or the proponents could please speak to the amount of blasting that may be occurring in this area and provisions for minimizing, not I guess, there's always concerns about minimizing damage, but minimizing disturbance for the neighbors.
Sure. If I'll go to the applicant for that question. Is just if you can just touch briefly on how much blasting is required for this.
Yeah, through the mayor. There is some rock on the existing building site. The existing house is actually built partially on rock, and so there will be some blasting that will be required. The exactly extent we're not entirely sure, because with the park light setting and the existing trees, we can't really go in with equipment to pre-drill and test exactly, and that is not really reasonable for single residents to do that. So some blasting will occur. The extent I cannot answer that yet, but all the precautions that blasting will require obviously have to be followed, and we also have the advantage of a bigger property where your nearest neighbor is not 10 feet away.
Right. And last question, if I may, please. The stone fencing around both of these properties are actually lovely, and I just wanted to confirm that the fencing will be retained and, if not, enhanced, and that and if they're not going to be retained, what are the provisions for their fencing, please?
Yeah, through the mayor. Very good question. The stone wall will remain. Again, the owners recognize the value for the community. It's an old wall, and even the gates will actually remain. So again, there will not be really a change visible. I mean, during construction, that's different, but yeah, it will remain as it is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Zilka. I have then Councillor Patterson, then Appleton, and Braithwaite.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I think architecturally, I can see why the design panel was quite impressed by these. It is very good quality work, and the retention of so much in the way of landscaping and improving upon it is really gratifying, I think, for the community. I'm just wondering, perhaps if some comments on where there is the proposal to remove the existing home and the accessory buildings, if there's any opportunity to reclaim, salvage, or reuse any of the materials that are coming out, or I'm hoping that it is not all being transported to the landfill, but since some of these homes must have had some, I think, very good quality materials originally. So could the proponent speak to that, perhaps? Thank you.
Sure. I'll give it to Mr. Johan Connect. I think you're up probably on this one.
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor. And by the way, the name gets better and better the more you...
I know, it does. I always stick with Peter if I bump into you on the street.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that was actually a topic of last week's meeting with the general contractor, Renala Freeborn. How do we be responsible with the value of materials that are in there? We all know the value of wood, but particularly the older wood. So that's being explored at the moment. Like flooring, for example, or maybe possibly windows. But it is just good practice that we, on all our projects, really encourage and look and more or less in trying to not enforce, but there's value in that for sure.
Thank you. That's it. That's very good to hear, because I think the more we can do that, it helps certainly to retain some of that value of the homes and is not all going to the landfill. So thank you for making every effort to do that. Thank
you, Councillor Patterson. I see the owner, Mr. Matrick, has his hand up with a thumbs up. Do you wish to speak on this as well?
We are going to try to salvage some of the hardwood and other items in the house. We've built time in our process to go through it. So we're of the same bias that if we can reuse some of the hardwood and move it into our new houses, that would be a huge win. And if we can't reuse it for our places, if someone else can get the benefit of using it for their future place, that is a goal.
Thank you, Mr. Metric. Anything else, Councillor Patterson? Okay, thank you very much. I have Councillor Appleton and then Braithwaite and then Green.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you probably to the applicant. Just with reference to 3125 Beach, you know, it's clear to me and evident and through the comments of the advisory design panel that there's been an effort made here to design and situate the development on the lot in order to take advantage of the existing landscaping and the existing, well, just the lay of the land. And I appreciate that that's where that's coming from. I do have a question about the siting of the house at 3125 and as it comes in conflict with the Gary Oak trees. I do not purport to be an architect or to, you know, and oversimplifying things, but I'm just wondering, you know, is there an opportunity for the orientation of this building, which is let's be honest, is very large. This is a very large residence, to situate it even 10 to 15 to 20 feet to the east, such that it doesn't come in conflict with those trees. I'm sure this has been considered, but I would just like to hear from the applicant as to the specific design need that mandates the removal of those trees, given the scope of the size of the house.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Mr. Johanneck.
Through the mayor. Like I mentioned, you know, over 2 years of multiple designs. I don't know how many actually, we stopped counting. And so a lot of effort, like I mentioned earlier, has been put into finding the right location, which is influenced not only by minimizing impact on the existing landscaping, so using the existing building footprint, but expanding on that. Also considering the closer we are to the water, the lower the house will be. So we have to look at the flood construction levels. Like Councillor Green mentioned at ADP was mentioned that the houses will be built to post-disaster standards structurally, and which is a significant commitment, but with the intent that these will be here for a long time. So the placement of the houses, particularly like 3125, like you asked, has been considered to find the right balance in height, also not to trigger any variances in regard to the building height. So the existing house is actually, I believe, 6 feet taller than the new one. So, and then the length, of course, to have the program for the house spread out with these magnificent views, the house will get longer, wider to capture those views. But then also the existing driveways that I mentioned earlier that will actually remain in, and that forecourt is the space to find a balance between the front yard and the rear yard, the ocean frontage. So 2 trees is, I think, from the bigger picture, sure it's a loss, but it's I think the best scenario that the team was really able to come up with, and I think it's an excellent one. And I would even argue, if you would rebuild the existing house, that one Gary Oak to the southwest would be impacted either way, and already has some damage. So I hope I answered your question.
You did answer. I'm not sure. Councillor Appleton, anything else you wish to follow up on?
That's fine. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Then I have Councillor Braithwaite, then Green.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And through you, my question actually was very similar to Councillor Patterson's, so I was very happy to hear the answer. Thank you for that. And just going on something that Councillor Appleton said about the size of the house. Yes, it's a large house, but I think that what I would like to say is that that house could have, under our current rules, been built a heck of a lot bigger. And so I actually appreciate the fact that they've kept it to the size that they have. And Mr. Johanneck, I think I said your name right. I would just like to show some appreciation for that. I think that that it has it is a very well-designed house for actually both of them for the properties. And I do appreciate the fact of the sizing. And I know Councillor Green has some comments, but once she's done, then perhaps we can have a discussion on whether we separate these to move the motions, or like if we do them one at a time, or if we do them both together.
My preference would be that we do them separately as we had different
Okay.
agenda items, but I think we can continue the discussion until we get to motions.
Okay.
Councillor Green?
Yes, I was prepared to make a motion, Mayor, if you so wish.
It's totally in order. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thank you. I will move the staff recommendation that we approve this application.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do you wish to add anything else, Councillor Green?
No, I really appreciate all of my colleagues' comments on these properties, and I know it's it is a huge undertaking. It is a huge property, and it's a very special property. And I think, frankly, I will give credit to the owner and his design team and architect. They have respected this property, I think, in the kind of vision they've created for the two homes. And so there are times when we see developments that we're very disappointed in, but in this development, I think everyone was very impressed with the amount of care and detail that has gone into this design. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Before I go to Councillor Appleton, I haven't spoken yet on this. I just have one question before I get to additional comments, and that is just this is to Mr. Matrick, the owner. You've owned this building for a long time. It is a beautiful old house as well, and I'm just curious. Not to say we shouldn't, this. I just want to compliment again. Very high quality design, very high quality build, all those positive things. But I'm always curious why the decision was made after the time in the building to replace it as opposed to renovate what is a pretty iconic building, certainly for people sailing past it.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship. This house has unfortunately had 4 renovations, and the last one that we inherited before we moved into it is effectively failing. So we have mold, water seepage in the windows, and when we reviewed renovation as a potential versus building new, what we discovered is we would basically be building effectively a new house, having to rip everything out, dealing with mold, not waterproofing in the basement. We've got a creek running through our basement right now that has a sump pump. And as we all know, climate change is coming. So this is not a house that's destined to age well in its current state. And it is unfortunate because our first starting point on this was, can we work with what we have? Can we renovate? Can we fix it? And the cost is equivalent to building a new house.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarity. It's always hard to see these beautiful old houses being replaced, so it's always nice to hear the story behind it. Councillor Appleton?
Procedural, Your Worship, the motion on the table is for 6.3 or 6.4?
Procedurally, we're on 6.3 in that order, so we're at 3115 Beach Drive, which is the smaller of the 2 lots. But my apologies, but I did just want to ask the question as we were talking about both. So you're right. I probably should have saved my question until we got to the second one. But for clarity of everybody, we are dealing with ADP 00132 at 3115 Beach Drive at this point in terms of the motion. So speaking to the motion at this point, anybody else wish to add? Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. Regarding 3115, it is nice to see a vacant lot being built on. I should have prepared staff for this ahead of time, so if they don't have the answer, I'll completely understand. But how many vacant lots are left in the Uplands development area?
Do staff know the answer? I know of 2, this being one of them, but staff, did you know of any others?
Because this is a very good sign that we're finally getting these things built out.
Sorry, Ms. Jensen or Mr. Anderson, do you know if there's the total number of empty lots?
No, Your Worship, we could definitely get that information for council.
That'd be helpful. Thank you so much.
That's
fine.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this? No, with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Then we move to item 6.4, 3125. Obviously, we've had discussion on this.
I'll move item 6.4 for the ADP 00133 for 3125 Beach Drive.
Second.
Second.
And the recommendation is laid out there to receive the report and to approve the setting and design. Any other discussion? Councillor Zelka, then Councillor Appleton.
Thank you so much. Regarding the 46 trees that are to be added as part of this development, I was wondering if are these saplings? Are these going to be partially grown trees? Or I just would love to have some idea from the landscaping perspective. How long will it take before we achieve a measure of coverage, please?
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. I'm going to actually ask staff that more probably in a more general sense. Do we set a timeline for that achievement, or is it sort of at their full maturity? And if the applicant wishes to add anything to that in the specifics on this one, that would be welcome. Ms. Jensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. When we're going through these applications and we do get Parks input, a lot of what the feedback that you see from the Parks Department, again, is based on their tree protection bylaw. And in one of the schedules to that bylaw actually speaks to different sizes of trees, and that is at maturity. So small tree versus a medium tree, 50 square meters of canopy coverage versus a larger tree. And so it's the applicant's choice to determine which trees they choose to put on their site, so long as it's achieving that tree canopy cover, in this case, the 45%. So that is what we're looking for, not necessarily the age of the tree that they're planting, but how we're going to achieve that canopy cover.
So satisfactory. Good. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Speaking against the motion, well, I recognize that there's been significant design work done here. The scope and scale of what's being proposed, in my opinion, could still be done in such a way as to be able to retain the trees. So I do recognize that there's been significant work done in that regard. In my view, there still could be design changes that would help retain those trees.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton, and I always appreciate if people are voting against a motion to have that explanation for the clarity of the applicants. Any other discussion on the motion as it stands? I'm not seeing any, so I'm just going to throw in an extra comment here, because reading these two, I was quite concerned about the similarity of the designs and those rules that are there intended to kind of keep those separations. And I just want to express my appreciation to the applicants for the thoughtfulness of the answer in terms of how they came to that decision to make not mirrored but sort of representative design work on these two lots, because I think it's important to not have a cookie cutter approach to the upland. It's a core part of what makes it so attractive. Any other discussion on this proposal? There's a motion. Not seeing any. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Appleton opposed. That passes. And thank you very much to the applicants for coming tonight and being available to answer questions. With that, we're moving on to item number 6.5 for upland setting and design at 3255 Norfolk Road. And Ms. Jensen, back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this particular site lies along the east side of Norfolk Road, where the owner is proposing to replace the existing home, which was built in 1965, with a new two-story home. The proposed house has been designed with an English arts and crafts influence, incorporating quality materials such as a white brick facade, bronze frame windows, and a barrel vaulted porte cochere. The garage, which is attached to the house, is sited to the rear of the home with access through the porte cochere. With the slope of the land, the home itself will read as a one-story building from the street and 2 stories from the rear, with the massing and scale that is similar to adjacent properties. Most of the existing landscaping will be retained while introducing an additional 11 trees. 8 of these are replacement trees for the removal of 4 trees within the building envelope. Overall, the tree canopy cover will achieve more than 45%, which meets the requirements of the tree protection bylaw. Also considered at the April meeting, the advisory design panel recommended that council consider approving the application. The panel noted that the arts and crafts style was a positive contribution to the uplands area, and that the siting of the garage at the rear of the home was a positive element. They also noted that the design met the intent of the Uplands Design Guidelines. Again, staff have reviewed the application with respect to site characteristics and its fit within the neighborhood. The home itself is proposed with similar siding to the existing home, trying to maximize the open space. The siting and design of the project is compliant with OCP policy and the Uplands Design Guidelines. All zoning bylaw regulations are met, so no variances are required, and the park-like setting is enhanced. Staff are requesting council direction.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jensen. And I believe the applicants are available for answer questions as well. Council, do you have any questions of staff or the applicant at this time? I see a hand up with Councillor Zelka. Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you very much, Chair. The property reads as a one-story building. I imagine there's going to be a full basement. So I was wondering if there could be some discussion of, or someone could speak to the blasting and provisions around blasting, please.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. And I'm not sure, is it Mr. Sahota that's the builder designer? Go ahead, Mr. Sahota.
Hi there, yes. So the design intent, this site was acquired by myself in 2017, and we began discussions with our design team at that time on potential massing for the site. And I went through several iterations. The first iteration considered significant blasting as a result of a sort of vastly different design for that site. The current iteration, however, essentially mirrors the existing footprint of the building and the slope of the site. And so it's at a point at this stage where we may be able to get away without any blasting and maybe some hoe ramming at the northwest elevation. But in all likelihood, there's going to be some minor blasting required at that corner of the site, but it's going to be quite marginal and minimal, and it's quite far set back from the neighboring property at that location as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mayor. And it's actually more of a comment, really, if I can be indulged. Just to Miss Jensen. Sorry, I forgot who was talking to this. I just wanted to mention that I really love the new checklist that was included on this particular application. And I'm wondering if that's going to be used on all future applications within that come forward from the Uplands.
Yeah, Ms. Jensen, do you want to speak to that at all?
Just to clarify, are we speaking to the checklist of all the design guidelines or to the chart we've put together to try to clarify the tree characteristics?
I think it's actually the green form that
the materials and colors.
The materials and colors. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, to clarify, that is a checklist that was put together a number of years ago for the applicant's use as they're preparing and submitting materials, so that both staff and the design panel have an opportunity to review how the house will be put together. In this particular instance, the applicant has used that checklist. We are finding that more and more in the age of computer software, that a lot of that information is being incorporated directly into the plans themselves. So it's most times council's actually seeing that content within the plans rather than that separate checklist.
Yeah, which is kind of unfortunate because if I can, Mayor, it's unfortunate because I find it very helpful to have it all on that one form like that. So.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Anything else? Nope. Any other discussion? I think that's usually a good sign for the applications. Is there a motion the council wishes to put forward?
I'll move Upland Siting and Design ADP 00134325 North Boak Road.
Second.
Okay, so this is a move for receipt and approve siting and design. Any other discussion on this? No, I will just say briefly, I appreciate the interesting design. Nice mix of sort of classic and modern and attention to detail, and also appreciate the sort of tying it to the slope of the land as well in a very innovative way. So thank you for that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That passes. Thank you very much. And thank you to the applicants for coming out tonight. We're on to item number 6.6, the heritage referral for property, Heritage Register at 2072 Hampshire Road. Mr. Anderson, I believe you're speaking to this item.
Yes, Your Worship, and thank you. So council may recall with respect to this heritage referral for the property at 2072 Hampshire Road, that council had considered placing a 60-day protection order on the property, did so in March 8th, 2021. And the application has subsequently been referred and had been referred to the Heritage Commission for review and recommendation. As well, staff had taken the opportunity to work with the owners and applicants to explore heritage designation and also other options related to the possible retention of the home on the property. So what we have a protection order that expires May 7th, 2021. Council has before it the option to consider heritage designation of the property or to have staff continue on with the review of the building permit application that includes moving the home. As I believe council recalls, it's proposed to be moved by the owners to their family property in Metchosin. With respect to the process that we've undertaken, the application was, a report was prepared and presented on April 14th to the Heritage Commission for consideration of whether to recommend a heritage designation or any other options related to heritage protection for the property. As per the report, the Heritage Commission has actually recommended that, maybe I'll just read the recommendation, it might be a little simpler for me. The commission subsequently recommended that whereas the statement of significance drafted in 2007 did not accurately reflect the condition of the property, significantly altered beginning in 1987, the commission does not recommend the designation of the property to council. And the minutes have been attached to the report as well. I can also report out that through our discussions with the applicant, they've indicated that they would not support a heritage designation of the property. And upon review of exploring other options respecting retaining the home on the property, the applicants have indicated they're not interested in further pursuing that. What we also have, my apologies, I referred to applicants. The owners have also provided a submission that is in council's agenda package that relates to similar information that was presented to the Heritage Commission. And for council's wish, I believe we have the owners here at the meeting if there's any questions related to that submission. But with that, the recommendation that staff have provided is that in this situation, that council consider rescinding the temporary protection order and that staff continue to process the building permit application related to moving the home from the property. With that, Your Worship, I'll leave it back to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the owners for being here this evening. I don't know if we'll need to go to you or not, but I certainly appreciate your attendance. Councillor Patterson, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And just really some clarification on this one. I appreciate the report from staff, and I certainly appreciate the information that was put forward by the owners with respect to the existing statement of significance that was reviewed. And I'm just wondering about our process then for ensuring that statements of significance, when they're being reviewed, actually reflect. I think there was a gap, obviously, in this, and renovations took place over a number of years. But there was obviously a gap between the time this statement of significance was written and some of the renovations that ensued. And with the process that we have in place now, the Heritage Commission members who also would have often on applications visited sites and verified statements of significance. We've changed that process a bit. So I'm just wondering if coming out of this, if there are any there's any insight into how we manage the process going forward, so that the statements of significance that are on file actually reflect what has gone through the permitting process or the changes, the renovations that have taken place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I'll give that to Mr. Anderson to talk to our process.
Thank you, Worship. I think maybe one of the main points to be made is that when we are looking at currently in our situation, we're looking at statements of significance and determining the heritage value and character of the property, that staff and possibly heritage consultants would be involved in actually making that assessment and pulling together that information. That would include an opportunity for staff to attend the site and with perhaps as I noted, the heritage consultant to review that information. And that's something that's allowed for. The issue I think that Councillor Patterson refers to does relate to concerns around volunteer members and issues of liability and responsibility, and also the issue of whether or not a meeting is comprised when you have several members of a committee attending a site. So I just want to assure the council that when we're reviewing statements of significance and information supporting that, staff are in a position to be able to access the properties at the owner's consent, of course, in order to conduct that information gathering piece. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that information. And I'm really appreciative of the owners so clearly outlining the changes that took place and how the statement no longer really applies to the house. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Are there any other discussions or comments on this? Questions? No? Okay. Councillor Appleton, you're also the liaison for the Heritage Commission. So anything, questions or comments you wish to have?
Thank you, Worship. I'll be brief. I appreciate Councillor Patterson's comments because they really reflect. I think it's important that I convey not the concern, but just the discussion that happened at the Heritage Commission definitely reflected the type of thoughts that Councillor Patterson has put forward. Just an interest in ensuring that subsequent changes to a property were accurately captured in the statement of significance. And I think the members of the commission were clear that, for the most part, that they had not encountered a significant disparity between the statement of significance and what the reality of the current state of the property was. So this could be seen as a bit of an outlier, but they also identified that there was a need to ensure that things reflected, the current state of things. And I would concur with Councillor Patterson, and I think the members of I don't want to speak for the members of the commission, but I know that the members of the commission were very appreciative of the landowners providing that context, that information. I guess I would just flag it, not just sound negative, but I guess I would just flag it that if the landowners were not in a position to advance the level of information and detail, which they did, to the Heritage Commission, then it would have been more difficult to contextualize the difference between what was in the statement of significance and the current status of the property. So I do appreciate the landowners taking the time to put that material forward, both to the commission and to council, because it helped kind of straighten that side of things out. And so again, I think we recognize that it is a bit of an outlier to have a large disparity between the current status and what is in the statement of significance. I think that's unusual. But as liaison, it's important for me to convey to council really clearly that the commission sort of identified this as something that they wanted to make sure that there was a process to address in the future. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. Just for Mike, I'm going to follow up to that because I think it's important. Mr. Anderson, if there are building permit applications that come forward in future attached to a building that's on the heritage register with a statement of significance that has identified heritage assets, is there a process for flagging that and doing a comparison so that character defining elements, et cetera, are sort of brought to attention? So if they're being changed, that those would just, I guess, staff would be made aware of them, and statements of significance would either have to be changed or removed or whatever was appropriate.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, and I think I'd like to refer to this as a historic anomaly, and pardon me for the phrase, but this really, I don't think would occur in our current recent history, if I may. I think we'd catch any changes and building permits would be reviewed in the context of we immediately look to see if a property is on the register when we get a building permit application. So, Your Worship, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Chair. So just a comment, if I may. I mean, I'm of mixed minds on this. I'm saddened that that this elements of this house is part of the second oldest or part of two oldest houses here in Oak Bay, and I understand it's gone through quite a number of changes, and the statement of significance has been radically changed, and for some of those aspects, I most likely will be supporting removal of the temporary protection order. I take solace on two items. One is that the building effectively will be saved by being moved to Metchosin. And two, this whole process has laid bare more elements of vital history to the settlement of Oak Bay. And I'm sure all of this will end up in the archives. And that at least gives me some solace, even though I feel very sad about this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zalka. I don't see any other hands up. Does anybody wish to make a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Yes, Your Worship, I will move the staff recommendation to receive the report and to rescind the temporary protection order.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any further discussion on this? I'll just say a couple of words here. This application reminds me that there's houses and there's homes, and the heritage register, I think, plays a really important role for us to capture both. And in this case, it's captured the importance of the house, but the process has also captured, I think, the family history with this house and the changes and the pieces. And I share Councillor Zalka's comments. I'm very happy that this is the owners care enough about this and care enough about the stories that are attached to this and that family history, that they're keeping this house alive in a different part of our region, but still alive. And that storyline is continuing, that arc is continuing. And we wouldn't be aware of it. We wouldn't have it elevated to community awareness, and we wouldn't have the stories captured in our records and for the community's benefit without the registration happening. And I'm sure it's probably a bit of a frustration for owners to have to go through this process of going through when demolition or the move is being performed to go through this process of evaluation. But it really does help us as a community carry these narratives forward and to understand our history in that way. And so I just want to thank this family for registering it all these years ago, because I think we wouldn't have the stories if we didn't. And I think it gives us an opportunity just to celebrate I think quite a wonderful family history that this has in recent years, but of course a much longer history with the community as a whole. So very supportive of the motion. I think it's appropriate, but also very appreciative of the owners for all that they've done here over the years. So any other discussion on this item? Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to everyone's comments. I too am sorry about the future of this house, but I'm glad that the family is going to preserve it in some way. But I'm also very grateful to the Heritage Commission for pointing out the flaws in the statement of significance and for making what I consider a very, very reasonable recommendation. And I think we should remember that they do serve a very valuable role for all of us in the matter of heritage. I think sometimes they are misunderstood in the community, but they are realistic people and they want to make sure that the process is correct. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. All right, I don't see any other hands up, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? And any opposed? Not opposed, that carries. And may that house have a safe, Mr. Corwin, have it a safe journey out to Metchosin. I'll ask the mayor out there to give it a warm welcome when it arrives.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you. With that, we're moving on to item number 7.1, which are onto reports and memorandums. All these items are subject to public input. So as we go through, each of these items has pieces to it, but we're basically going to take questions from council. Then I'll reach out to the public input. We'll have then some discussion, a motion, and a vote. Just so people understand, we'll probably move through these reasonably quickly because they're often subject of things that we've dealt with for a long time. So if anybody from the public wishes to speak, to an item, then I would encourage you to speak up at that time. At this point, in the registered speakers, I have someone for item 9.1, which is the financial plan bylaw. And each of these items I will invite people to speak to. So with that, I thank you, Ms. Williams, for putting up the phone number. And just for everybody's information, if you are following along on Zoom, then you can just raise your hand, and that is at the bottom of the screen, you should see a reactions button, and you can just use that and see it'll show you to raise a hand, and I will see that. And if you're calling in, you can hit *9 to raise your hand, and I will see that on the screen as well. I don't get to see everybody's hands on this. They should pop to the top of my screen. But Ms. Williams, I appreciate your assistance. I will just confirm with you at each point to see if there's anybody left that wishes to speak. So with that long entry point, I will go to item number 7.1, the Trunk Sewer Capital Reserve Funds Refund. Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Council will recall that the district recently consented to be part of a new service for liquid waste management that included the construction of the new sewer treatment plant. As a result, the previous regional service was dissolved, and the previous regional service apportioned costs for the conveyance of sewer and the infrastructure related to that in a different way to the new service. So as a result, the CRD is returning the reserve contributions that were collected as part of that service. The district would levy a CRD tax annually, part of that paid for that service and was remitted to the CRD, and that's how those reserve funds were accumulated over the years. So since that old service model has been dissolved, the CRD is returning the accumulated reserve contributions, which is a total of $350,000. Staff are recommending that we transfer those funds to a capital reserve. However, council may wish to use those funds in a different way. One thing, if council chooses to use those funds to offset the 2021 CRD tax increase, that's something I'll need to know today because I'll have to come back with a revised tax rate bylaw on May 10th. But any other proposed uses of that refund, staff could receive direction today or anytime in the future. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Mr. Payne, the way you worded that was slightly different than I understood it. I just want to make sure I'm clear. Is the expectation that they're returning this, but they'll expect it back again next year or something? Or is this just a surplus under the old model and it's back and then it'll get paid through the taxes going forward?
Well, Your Worship, we accumulated reserve funds at the CRD for the purpose of replacing capital assets under the old model. Under the new model, they will be collecting our requisition annually, and a part of that requisition will be set aside in a reserve to replace the new capital, such as the sewer treatment plant. So they're returning the old reserve funds by offsetting our this year's requisition. If we choose to reduce our CRD tax increase this year, we will have to increase it next year because it'll springboard back to regular levels of funding.
Right. Thank you very much for that clarification. Are there any questions of staff on this? Or I'm not seeing any. Councillor Braithwaite. Councillor Green, your hand is still raised, just so you know. I don't think you intended it to be raised on this item, but go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite, then Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to Mr. Payne. So, Mr. Payne, from what you said, I think I understand that if we agree to your recommendation today that we keep this in a reserve fund, then we could at some point in the near future decide to take some out to use it for a different project.
Mr. Payne.
Yes, Your Worship, through you. If council chooses to transfer these funds to our capital works reserve, then spending of those funds will just be subject to our reserve funds bylaw. And the capital works reserve is a pretty broad reserve that can be basically can be used for any sort of capital.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff, one of the recommendations or one of the suggestions was to possibly use the money to reduce, I guess, a CRD tax allocation. I think service requisition. I'm not quite sure if I'm wording it correctly. Is there anything to prevent us from, instead of applying some of those aspects this year, could we apply those aspects next year in terms of reducing the CRD allocation?
Thank you, Councillor Zolka. Mr. Payne?
Your worship, if we transferred these funds to the capital reserve this year, we couldn't then transfer them out to offset a tax increase because it would have to be spent on capital. But if council directed staff to just take it in as general revenue, then we could use surplus to offset the increase next year. Of course, staff's recommendation is to not use unsustainable funding sources to fund ongoing operating expenditures, but that is certainly something that council can choose to do.
If I may continue, please.
Go ahead, Councillor Zalka.
So then just to confirm, is there a bylaw that is restricting us where we put these funds? I got the impression from the report that because they're related to sewer allocations, we should probably put it in the sewer fund. But I'm hearing that we may have some flexibility there.
Go ahead, Mr. Payne.
Your worship, yes, council has a lot of flexibility in terms of what they choose to do with these funds. It's staff recommendation that they be put into a reserve only because they relate closely to capital replacement, which is what they're originally envisioned to be used for. But council can use these funds for a wide variety of different things.
I appreciate that. I'm leaning towards leaving the funds as to what they were originally allocated for. So a question then related to that, if we did put it into the sewer fund, could we use it for the works being done in the uplands in terms of sewer separation?
Thank you, Councillor Zalka. It's a capital works reserve, just for clarity. It's coming from the sewer reserves at the CRD.
Yes.
The proposal here is into the capital works reserve, which is more broad. Mr. Payne, does that include the option of using it for the sewage separation?
Through your worship, yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Paterson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I support staff's recommendation here. I would be happy to make a motion on it when it is due. But just to clarify with Mr. Payne, his recommendation really is a solid basis, I think, for a recommendation, is it not, to help us stabilize our taxes going forward. And although it's a sizable amount of $350,000, it's still, not a major amount in terms of capital sewer funding. And so this just helps us stabilize the capital for the new waste treatment plant, does it not?
Mr. Payne,
Worship, were you finished?
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to suggest it's not for the treatment. This money coming back to us is now ours to spend. It's now going to be no longer related to the treatment plant per se. But I'll should let you answer that question, Mr. Payne, just for clarity.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, if I understand the question correctly, I would contend that part of the main motivation for the recommendation is tax stabilization. So council may recall that over the last 5, 6, 7, I think maybe 8 years, the CRD taxes have been escalating at a double-digit rate in order to fund the liquid waste treatment plant.
Yeah.
That phase in is now over, should council is now over. And so in 2022, the taxpayer would expect a much more moderated increase, closer to forced growth, and not any more double-digit increases. If we choose to use this to offset the increase, we will more than likely see another double-digit increase next year.
Yeah.
And so that does form part of the motivation for the staff recommendation here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paterson. I have Councillor Braithwaite, then Appleton.
Thank you, Mayor. But just to clarify, Mr. Payne, it doesn't stop us from utilizing even a portion of this money to do something immediately within the community, like fixing railings somewhere or purchasing a piece of equipment for a park or something like that.
Mr. Payne?
Your Worship, no, it doesn't prevent us from doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think my question to staff is kind of an extension from Councillor Braithwaite's question, which is to say, if we viewed, and I'm not saying council views it this way, but if theoretically, if council viewed this as essentially, unexpected surplus funds that were not previously budgeted for, or at least they're not taken, they're not immediately applicable to the budget. Provided they were set aside in the capital, but let's say they are in fact set aside in the capital works reserve. What would the mechanism be for council to, given the fact that we've completed our budgeting process for the year, what would the mechanism be for council to discuss potential options for the usage of those surplus funds, basically to evaluate a range of options for capital projects in 2021 that could utilize those funds?
Thank you, Councillor Appleton. I'll give that to Mr. Payne, but it may also invite Ms. Varela to comment on that as well, because it talks to the broader sort of strategic planning and funding approach that council can take. Go ahead, Mr. Payne.
Yes, Your Worship. There's a couple different ways. Obviously, through the budget deliberation process, council can propose the use of funds at any point, propose projects at any point, and the funding for that. Staff always bring forward an accounting of our total reserves that are available. This would be part of that total accounting. Should council want to provide direction to staff to spend these funds in a specific way prior to budget, I expect that would be subject to a notice of motion or some sort of a mechanism that way, and staff would proceed accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. I would just add to that. I think the appropriate process would be to have a motion to use the funds and to ask staff to come back with some options of how to adjudicate that, because I think one of the problems is there's a lot of options for things that could be done. And so how do you narrow that list down and make sure that what we think of as a simple capital project isn't going to have some weird spin-off impact on some of the other operational teams or something. So that would be my suggestion, that we would make the motion to essentially ask for a report back on a process to consider, I guess what would you call it, an exceptional circumstance for a capital spend. Thank you. Any other discussion on this? Thank you. I don't have much to add myself. I actually, the discussion that's happening right now, I think is one maybe just, it feels like this council has been unbelievably diligent about focusing our energies and are doing everything we can as good stewards of this community to ensure that we are appropriately funding the full capital replacement of our sewers, of managing and supporting the staff to have the resources to do the work that is required, undertaking a lot of the structural changes in terms of the background of administration and things, so that we're meeting better practices for transparency. None of that is very glamorous. And so I think the idea of having a little bit of money that's unexpected being spent on the community in a way that just lifts people's spirits a bit, I think would not be out of sorts. And I appreciate that nothing's as easy as that, but I like the spirit of that discussion that's happening here, and perhaps we can come back at another meeting if that's the will to just, we could make some motion here today, but it probably would take a little bit of thought to come up with an appropriate motion of how to bring back that information to consider. But I do like the idea of that, because I think it's been a tough 18 months or so with the pandemic and the time spent. And I think sometimes it's nice to be able to reward our community a little bit as well when we have unexpected money come in. But that's, I think, yeah, that's my 2 cents on that discussion. There's no motion on the floor right now, so go ahead, Councillor Appleton, you have your hand up.
I'm sorry, Mayor, do you not want to go to the public first before?
Oh, my apologies. Thank you very much. I did invite the public to speak on this item, and I did not then go out to them, so thank you. If anybody has called in, I don't see any hands raised in my screen here, but Ms. Williams, has there been anybody, any members of the public that have indicated they wish to speak to this item?
No, Your Worship, nobody has joined the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that, then we're back to this table.
So I would put forward the staff recommendation that the report be received and that a one-time refund of $350,115,000 be put into the district's capital works reserve.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any other discussion on this one?
If I may be indulged, your worship.
Go ahead.
I think that your suggestion is a good one, that we come back at a later time. I would like to see us be able to do something for the community. I think we could probably come up with some great ideas on how to just give a little bit of a boost to the community. So I do like that idea. And I think that we could do that at some later date.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Councillor Green.
Yes, I would also support your idea. I think it is moving in the right direction, given the 14 months that we've all undergone in this community, but in every community. But I think if there is something we can do, I would appreciate knowing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Green. I don't see any other hands up on this, so the motion is live. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you very much. And I'll do better at asking for public input. Again, we're moving on to the UBCM Asset Management Grant. If anybody from the public wishes to speak to this item, please call in, or join the meeting and use the tools within Zoom to raise your hand. Either are acceptable. I will go back to Mr. Payne for a brief overview of this item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Emily, the Union of BC Municipality invites applications to its asset management planning grant stream. As the name suggests, this grant application stream supports asset management planning activities. So staff intend on submitting an application for this to ask for funds to assist with the preparation of infrastructure replacement plan, tentatively scheduled for fall of 2021. The staff are planning and always were planning on doing this work in kind, but the grant funds could help supplement staff efforts, prepare more thorough analysis, more accurate projections. And the program requires that a couple of resolutions be passed by council for the application to be complete. Those resolutions that are recommended by staff are the resolutions that are required by the grant application. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Green, then Councillor Patterson.
Yes, Mayor, I would certainly be willing to make a motion at this point. I know how much time and effort goes into grant writing. I think all of us have had our experience with grant writing, and anything that will help in this regard, I think it's worth applying on. So I would be happy to make the motion and then wait for discussion.
I'm just going to take questions at the moment, and I'll go to the public, and then I'll come back for the motion. I think is probably appropriate. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I also support the recommendation put forward by staff, but I do have a couple of questions. I believe Mr. Payne mentioned that they were thinking of in-kind contributions to this. So is this a matching commitment grant? And is the matching commitment then, does it have to be in cash or in-kind contribution? Can monies be used from the gas tax fund monies? And then the last question is, for what purposes will the grant and any commitment we are making be used? What's the outcome purpose of the objective of getting the grant?
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Mr. Payne.
Your Worship, through you, excellent question. The program provides up to $15,000, and it does require a matching contribution that can be in kind, which means that the value of staff time, which was already planned and obviously is funded in the regular operating budget, has to match that amount as well. We do believe that the amount of effort required from the finance and engineering teams will match that at $15,000. That $15,000 preliminarily would be used to hire either an engineering consultant or a financial modeling consultant, or even possibly some assistance with actual digital media preparation to support the preparation of that plan. And as mentioned, we do believe we have the expertise in-house to prepare a high quality infrastructure plan. but to be able to supplement it with additional funds, we expect to be able to provide an even higher quality. So that's the motivation behind the grant application.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I don't see any other hands up, so I'll just go out to the public. I don't see any hands raised or callers called in. So Ms. Williams, can you just confirm if there's any additional callers or anybody who from the public who's indicated they wish to speak to item 7.2?
Thank you, Your Worship. There are no callers.
Okay, thank you very much. So Councillor Green, you indicated you wish to make a motion and we can speak to that motion.
I'm happy to make the staff recommendation motion.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any other discussion on that? Nope, not seeing any. So I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much, everyone. We are on to item number, section number 8. This section being bylaws are not subject to public input, but we will be getting to section 9, which will. So the item number 8.1 is streets and traffic bylaw. We are looking for a motion for adoption. We don't typically debate adoption motions, but of course, if council, anybody wishes to raise anything, you can do so before I call the question. So can I get someone to read out the recommendation for the record?
I move that streets and traffic bylaw number 4100 2000 amended bylaw number 4778 2021 be adopted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. And if I can get the same for item 8.2.
I move that the public sewer bylaw number 3891 1996 amendment bylaw number 4779 2021 be adopted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Not seeing any hands jumping up. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. We're on to section number 9, our bylaws and permits. This is subject to public input. And as I said, we had one member of the public, Mr. Graham, who had indicated he wished to speak, but he also submitted correspondence that, I see he has rejoined our meeting. So I will call on the public after we go through this. Procedurally here, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to ask that council undertake a first and second reading of this bylaw, and then we will take questions of council, we'll take public input, and then we'll have a discussion. And after the discussion, there will be a vote of council. If that passes, of course, then that will move to a third reading, and then we'll come back to a future meeting for adoption. So with that procedure, if I could just get someone to move first and second reading, and you can do those together.
So Mayor, do you want the move receipt first before you move first and second?
Yes, let's keep those separate. So if you could just move receipt first. If someone would move receipt first.
I will move that the report titled Tax Rates Bylaw 2021, authored by Director of Financial Services, dated April 26, 2021, be received.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Is there any other discussion on the receipt? Mr. Payne, your hand is up right now. Are you wishing to speak to the motion to receive, or are you just wishing to give an introduction before we do first and second reading?
Your worship, if I'm not mistaken, we're on the financial plan bylaw adoption
that's correct. Sorry, was a different one read?
Yes, I believe the tax rate one was read.
Oh yeah,
okay.
sorry. It is that the report titled 2021-2025 Financial Plan Bylaw, authored by Christopher Payne, Director of Financial Services, dated April 26, 2021, be received. Sorry about that.
Thank you. No, thanks for that. Moved and seconded. Thank you. I should have followed a bit more closely as to what you're reading out. I don't see any discussion on that. All those in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. Thank you. And then we'll get to the, if we can do the first and second reading of this. If I'll just give the opportunity actually before we do that to Mr. Payne. Do you wish to do any introduction, Mr. Payne?
Your worship, that's up to, I can be brief if you wish.
Yeah, go ahead. This is after all bringing to a close a long process, so I don't think it hurts to just give some context for this stage of the financial plan consideration.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, you're right. It is a culmination of a lot of work. Budget deliberations proceeded February through March, which included 3 committee meetings dedicated to budget and 1 almost dedicated council meeting. The financial plan bylaw represents, or is supposed to represent to staff's greatest ability, all council direction receives and is really the formalization of the process. Council and public may notice that the financial plan bylaw is summarized on a very high level. And the purpose behind that is to maintain a legal spending authority maximum flexibility. It's just to ensure the district doesn't exceed legal spending authorities throughout the year. However, spending is reported in great detail in the format that council is used to seeing in the financial plan, a document which happens at Q2 and Q3 as well. There are some changes to what the financial plan bylaw represents when compared to the last detailed financial plan, which is why I think it was worth just going over some of those changes. A note that the police collective bargaining has concluded, so the amounts that were set aside in contingency in the financial plan, they're now being allocated to protective services. As well, the Todd House grant application was declined by the province. So the phase 2 capital project cannot proceed and they've been removed from the financial plan. And then we also have new construction property taxes that were a little bit above what were expected. So that's been integrated into the consolidated financial plan there. 2 more quick notes. Council is used to the statutory deadline of the financial plan. It must be adopted by May 14th. We're in line for that. Ministerial Order 192, 2020 permits the district to adopt the financial plan bylaw in one council meeting because of COVID-19. However, staff are recommending that we proceed with the normal bylaw approval process, which is 2 council meetings. So first, second, third reading today and final on May 10th. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Payne. And I really should not have even suggested skipping over that process of having you present. So with that introduction, if we think it's appropriate to have a first and second reading before I get to discussion questions.
I will move first and second reading of, I have to get my glasses to look up your right one, 2021-2025 financial plan bylaw number 4792 202. There's a V there, but it's got to be 2021.
It is 2021. Yep.
Yeah. It's
So
a challenging one to move on.
So that's first and second reading. Is there a seconder? Seconded. Thank you. And then we're going to get to discussion. I'll start with general questions if there's any, and if not, I'll go to the public input, and then we'll come back to more questions and discussion before we consider the vote. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I just wanted to make a reference, and I don't want to put. I'm not. This is a difficult one because I'm not sure all the necessary staff are around, and I'm putting people on the spot. But I do want to make reference to the correspondence that's received about the item about paving of the rec center parking lot, and I just guess what my question is to staff is, or for clarification. Even though that budget line item and that amount may be incorporated into the budget, based on the comments received through correspondence and some of the concerns that have been raised about how that particular activity is conducted, it is still possible for a motion to be brought forward or for council to direct that the implementation of that particular budget line item be done with some considerations as laid out from some of the community commentary. So I'm just wanting to confirm that that is something that's still a possibility, that council may request that the implementation of that budget line item be done using certain considerations. I'm not sure who best to direct that to. I would guess.
I think actually it's Mr. Payne, because I think it touches on a broader question of the financial plan bylaw. It gives a very high level authorization. So I think it's appropriate for Mr. Payne to talk to how restrictive that is and specific to specific capital projects, that whether and how council would speak to those as they go forward. Mr. Payne.
Your Worship, I'm not 100% sure where the respective department is in the planning stage of implementing that project. I'm fairly confident that it's not underway right now, and and therefore there is time for additional council input. The budget itself is $350,000, which does require, if we are going to award a contract that exceeds $250,000, we are required to bring that contract to council for approval. So that stage would still have to happen. Normally by that time, however, the district has conducted some sort of competitive process, and to interrupt that competitive process isn't ideal. So again, normally it would be ideal if council were to provide direction prior to that competitive process beginning. I don't believe that the contract for the parking lot, is that what we're referring to here, council, the parking lot pavement, or are we referring to the pavement management program? I'm sorry, I need some clarification there.
Councillor Appleton.
Yeah, specifically the rec center parking lot paving, yes.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I don't believe that we have awarded a contract for the parking lot pavement, but actually the Director of Engineering is telling me that it is under the same contract from the pavement management program, which has been awarded. So that would contradict what I just told you. I apologize for that.
So if I might just seek just some further clarification, then is there a I mean, obviously it's not gone through yet because the budget hasn't been approved yet, but the allocation is, what would be the process? I think we should have that clarification at this time. Mr. Haran.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So this, in terms of the contract awards and so on, this is happening under the umbrella of the broader pavement management program. So that's not a concern. Now, it's a great question that was raised both by the letter and by Councillor Appleton in terms of concerns about impacts to capital projects in general to Bowker Creek and the riparian areas nearby. So the concerns raised in the letter are, I guess the best way I can put it is with the district staff, myself included, and the rest of the team, Parks and Engineering and Public Works, being members of the Bowker Creek Initiative, like the steering committee, and being sensitive and aware of all the concerns. Our everyday business that we do, no matter where it is in the district, we factor in environmental impacts, including what's happening with Bowker Creek. So there are a number of issues that we're factoring in here when it comes to Oak Bay Rec Center parking. One of them is we're still in the middle of doing a bank assessment and erosion control assessment for the edge of the parking lot. So the project is still in the planning stages. This is just a matter of creating the funding available so that we can carry on and finish our work. But I do consider if there's a question about whether or not staff are aware of best practices when it comes to our work and how it impacts the riparian areas in Bowker Creek specifically, I'm happy to come back to council and talk more about those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I think it's also fair to say at $350,000, we're not doing major structural work within that parking lot. This would cover essentially a topping and repair approach with maybe some minor things around the banks. Is that fair, or is there more to it planned?
Yes, Your Worship. It's just a resurfacing of the parking lot that currently exists, and the only thing that's happening with that. So we're not changing where the water flows, like in terms of the stormwater. There's stormwater infrastructure already there that's separate from the creek itself. So there's no design work or changing of what's meant to happen in terms of the area. The only thing that's still outstanding and still work that's ongoing with ourselves and our geotechnical engineering consultants that we're using is just trying to make a proper assessment of the condition of the bank and what to do long-term around it to make sure that erosion control wise, and is there any other project that needs to happen around that, which is connected but separate, because we don't want to go ahead and do a project in the Oak Bay parking lot and then have some other thing that's going to happen later that we need to do related to the creek. So they're connected but separate, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks for that clarification, Mr. Haran. Anything else, Councillor Appleton?
No, thank you, Your Worship. It is, I very much appreciate the Director of Engineering's comments, because it's great to know that bank assessment work is underway, and and there's concomitant things happening with regard to that. So I appreciate that very much, and definitely recognize that that Mr. Haran and other members of staff have been participating in the Bowker Creek Initiative for some time, and know the desired outcome. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I'm just let you know, Mr. Haran, your hand is still up, so I'm not sure if you wish to add anything else, or if it's just.
I'll just say one more thing, Your Worship. Thank you for that. I think there will be an opportunity too for the council and the community to talk a little bit more about Bowker Creek in the next little while, because we do have plans to bring back some discussions on Bowker Creek daylighting feasibility and some of the work that's been going on Bowker Creek in general. So that will be a wonderful opportunity to get into what has staff been doing, what is staff planning, and some questions about future direction related to those issues. So, and that's coming soon here in the next few months at the latest. So I'm excited to bring that to talk about this more in depth at that time too.
Thank you, Mr. Haran. I have Councillor Green and then Councillor Zelka.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, just a cautionary note, and it's not meant as a criticism of anyone, but I think we have to be careful that we don't get too far down the road into operations. There are a lot of decisions that we make that are policy-based, but not operations. And I appreciate the concerns around operations, but I think we have to trust the staff and the team. And I think Councillor Appleton clarified that at the end, that we have to trust them through their experience to make these good decisions. I think there is an old saying, noses in and fingers out. And I think we have to be cognizant of that from time to time. So just a cautionary note. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Green. And that's always a good reminder to all of us to do that. There's always a rule for council to just make sure that the work being done is in alignment with sort of community values as part of our governance rail, and it's not always a clear line. So I appreciate that reminder, but I also appreciate the comments made by the letter writer and Councillor Appleton about the possibilities in this kind of situation. So Councillor Zelka, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm certainly looking forward to the public input on this shortly. I just wanted to confirm through you to staff that if there happens to be any stormwater leakage into the Bowker Creek, that I imagine that this is part of the analysis and part of what might be rectified. But there is an assumption, I believe, going forward from a policy perspective, that any stormwater collected on that parking lot will not be leaking or moving into the Bowker Creek. I just wanted to confirm that the staff's understanding is that going forward.
Sure, staff.
Yes, Your Worship. I haven't looked at specifically the catch basins and the mains in the parking lot of where they flow, but I should just caution in this question that there is a significant amount of stormwater infrastructure that feeds into Bowker Creek in the whole watershed, not just there, but in Saanich and Victoria. So I just want to be cautious about how we talk about that issue and the impacts that are going to happen when we talk about specific projects.
If I may continue, I very much appreciate the response, and you're absolutely right. We're doing the best we can. That particular stretch of Bowker Creek, I've always looked at with sort of a little bit of sorrow, because it has such potential from a placemaking perspective, from all sorts of different perspectives, and it's a riparian zone. Gosh, if only we had a riparian expert on council who could assist with this. The last question I'll put forward as I muse out loud is, will there be references or reach outs through the Bowker Creek initiatives and also to the province with respect to any works that have to be done in this area, please?
Mr. Haran, on this project?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I don't believe that that's required, but now that you've asked the question, I'll have to go back to my team and double check that we've met all the requirements. But I think that in general, my team and as we deal with projects, we're aware of the requirements in terms of our regulatory and licensing and all these issues that we need to do in terms of our environmental and public health and safety responsibilities. So of course, for this project as well, we will have followed those practices. And I can certainly confirm that and provide those details at a later time.
Thank you very much. I certainly trust that staff will be following this process very carefully and with good consideration for the public's concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Are there any other questions or at this time? I'm going to go then to the public and invite any members of the public who wish to speak. I do have one member of the public who pre-registered, and we do go in those orders. So up first, we have Mr. Graham speaking to this item. I know he submitted a written correspondence. I hope everybody had a chance to read that, and everybody's nodding, so that's good. So with that, Mr. Graham, welcome to the meeting, and you're welcome to address council on this.
Thank you, Mayor Murdoch, council and staff. I have tried to start my video, but I think the host has maybe disabled it. But
it's fine. We can hear you clearly, so that's all that matters.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and maybe just Ian Graham, 2615 Dean Avenue, and I'm a block from the Oak Bay border. I went to school in Oak Bay. My family connection goes back 4 generations, so I really care about Oak Bay, and I spend a lot of time in the community. Maybe just to start, just really appreciate Mr. Haran's comments, and I think it would be a great discussion to have a bit more discussion at the Boker Creek Initiative about the project. What I just wanted to say was, there isn't a lot of detail in the financial plan, but it is a significant expenditure. And I think it's a really big opportunity to do things differently. The current parking lot, so I think everybody's familiar with it. It's over 100 meters of adjacent to Boker Creek. The existing condition, we've got stormwater runoff, some of it going directly into the creek. We've got the parking lot and many of the vehicles encroaching into the riparian zone. Your engineering staff, again, have noted that the channelized nature of it, you've got these failing banks, some potentially pretty expensive works there. And then mobility. There is this disconnection with the section to the east that links up with Oak Bay, and then that section from B Street to Cadbra Bay. And it's really interesting. I've spent a lot of time looking, watching, and you'll have seniors from the Baptist housing, and they want to get over to that walkway along Oak Bay and further down towards Fireman's Park. And they have to navigate around these pickup trucks or whatever through that parking lot. Spend a bit of time out there. It's very interesting to watch that. The other thing around mobility is, we spend a lot of time thinking about recreation inside the walls of our community centers. Let's not forget how we get to our community centers. So I think there's another linkage there. So what I'm talking about is there's a real opportunity, I think, to reconfigure that parking lot, deal with the bank stability, improve habitat, enhance the riparian area, rain gardens, manage the stormwater, and making that connecting walkway. A lot of these ideas are informed already by the Boker Creek Blueprint, the watershed plan that goes back to 2003 now. Your own OCP and your watercourse DPA. And I think, you just have to look to the east, the Oak Bay High School and what was done there. It's a great model for how you can put a lot of these elements together. And I think coming out of COVID, I haven't got my ear to the ground as closely as probably some of you, but I think you're going to see a lot more federal and provincial infrastructure. And the criteria for funding is going to be around, they want to see integrated projects, environment, public works, mobility, climate action, resiliency. And this kind of project, hits that like a bullseye. And so I think there's an opportunity. 350,000 isn't much, but you could be partnering with other levels of government, to reconfigure this and really make something out of this. Is your community or our community center, right? our waterfront, Poker Creek. So, lastly, I just want to acknowledge that that this council, the mayor, proclaiming, issuing that proclamation. Not all municipalities did this, but issuing that proclamation on the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And, one of the whereas statements in there, and I'd like to read it: ecological restoration is a fundamental and important action that Oak Bay and its residents take to help heal natural areas and systems so that they may be resilient to the impacts of climate change and contribute to nature-based solutions to climate change. So again, this really sort of hits that. This is a great opportunity, I think, to put those words into action, and not just for the purpose of creating physical, but actually bringing a lot of residents and interest groups and interests together around that project. So I'd really be interested to hear what you think, and would love to spend some time out there and discuss opportunities with you and your staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. I think your points are excellent and very, very thoughtful and very well made. So thank you for addressing us this evening. Are there any other members of the public that have indicated they wish to speak, Ms. Williams?
Nobody has joined the meeting, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much. I do want to point out that during all of our special meetings, we did have a fair bit of public input through the process of the budget consideration. So that does not indicate any lack of interest in the community. I always find it interesting, though, as Mr. Graham has done, how little issues come up at all points of this that kind of raise awareness and help us implement these plans in a way that is positive. Not seeing any other members of the public, then back to this table. We have first and second motion on the floor, but this is a chance for debate and discussion as a body. And once that is concluded, if there's any, then I will call the question. Is there any further discussion? Not seeing any hands popping up, so I'm ready to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. And then I just need a motion for third reading.
We'll move third reading of bylaw number 4792, 2021, the financial plan bylaw.
And that was seconded, thank you. We don't normally discuss on third reading, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. So this will come back for adoption, I believe at the next meeting on May 7th, I think is our next meeting, but don't hold me to that. And then we have up next the tax rates bylaw, tied very closely to the last agenda item. And again, I'll just invite Mr. Payne to provide a quick overview.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, tied very closely to the financial plan bylaw, also statutorily required by May 14th, but after the financial plan bylaw adoption. This proposed bylaw raises the taxes necessary in the 5-year plan for general taxation. Also the BIA levy, the Business Improvement Area levy, the CRD taxes, and the CRHD, Capital Regional Hospital District taxes. We levy taxes for BC Assessment, the Municipal Finance Authority, the Transit Authority, and school, but we don't have to prepare a tax rate bylaw for those taxes. Staff automatically apply a uniform tax increase to all tax classes after considering non-market change assessment. Council may choose to pass on varying tax increases to the various classes. However, Council wanted to do this, staff would need a bit more notice so that analysis could be prepared well in advance of the statutory deadline. So something to consider if in the future, if need be. Staff aren't recommending that a review is necessary, as we have one of the lowest business class multiples in the province, and so changing the tax rates won't accomplish a significant amount of change. As mentioned previously, the Ministerial Order 192/2020 also permits the district to adopt this bylaw in one council meeting, but it has to be adopted after the financial plan bylaw. So now that we have not adopted the financial plan bylaw, we have to wait for adoption for May 10th as well if we choose to proceed with first, second, and third today. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
I thank you very much, Mr. Payne. I will just support the staff's recommendation and process on this. There's a reason that we have a separation of the first three readings and adoption, because it provides an opportunity for sober second thought. And while we are legally allowed to do it, I think we use that tool only when absolutely necessary, which is what was envisioned, I think, when it was brought in. So thank you for that overview. If I could get a mover to receive the report first.
I'll move that the report titled Tax Rates Bylaw 2021, authored by Christopher Payne, Director of Financial Services, dated April 26, 2021, be received.
Thank you. Seconded. Thank you. Seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? That passes.
And then I'll move that the Tax Rates Bylaw number 4793, 2021 be given first and second reading.
And seconded. Thank you. So that is now live on the table. Are there any questions? I have Councillor Zelka's hand. Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
There we go. Thank you so much, Your Honor. I'm used to seeing things called mill rates on these sort of things. I just want to confirm in the schedule, which gives the tax rates of dollars per thousand of taxable value. That's not a mill rate, is it? Or if staff could please clarify how I could generate the mill rate, please.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Mr. Payne.
Your Worship, yes, they're generally synonymous. You can call it a mill rate or a tax rate. The district's mill rate, however, would also include the other taxing authorities, which we don't control the tax rates for. So we combine them all together, and it's called a combined mill rate.
Mm. And if I may, when will we have that number available to us? Or do I wait until basically the tax bill arrives to discover that number?
Mr. Payne.
Thank you, through Your Worship. One of the last tax rates to arrive is one of the most significant, which is the school tax rate, which hasn't arrived yet. Generally, end of May, end of April, very beginning of May is the latest. So momentarily, and we normally publish the full mill rates on our property tax webpage once we receive that. So we're just waiting for that. All the other taxing authorities have provided us with their tax rates.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that through you, Chair. And I certainly wistfully say I wish there was a way we could influence that school rate to some extent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. I don't see other hands raised on this at this point. So again, any members of the public who wish to speak to the tax rates bylaw are invited to do so at this time. You can raise your hand within the Zoom app, or if you're calling in to the 1-800 number posted, you can hit *9 to raise your hand. I'll give it a moment in case anybody is just wishing the opportunity to call in. I'm not anticipating a large rush at this point, so I will then, Ms. Williams, I'll just confirm with you, are there any members of the public that have through the phone or through the app indicated their desire to speak to this item?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much. And I should just point out, I got a very helpful text from staff to let me know May 10th is the date that we are going to be contemplating the adoption of these bylaws. So thank you for that. Not seeing, so back to this table then, if there's any discussion, I'm not seeing any. I'll call the question then for first and second reading. All those in favor? Any opposed? And none opposed? And can I get a mover of third reading?
I'll move third reading of the tax rates bylaw number 4793, 2021 be given third reading.
Moved and seconded. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Similar process here. If anybody wishes to speak to this, you can call in at this time from the public for Boulevard Frontage Tax Amendment. Mr. Payne, would you like to give a brief overview?
Yes, Your Worship. The Boulevard tax levy recovers a portion of the cost to maintain the district boulevards. It's only charged on the properties that front Boulevard and that are district and are perceived to obtain a direct benefit from this service. So it covers approximately 77% of our total Boulevard maintenance costs. In this financial plan, the Boulevard maintenance cost rose by 2.8%. And so that's the increase proposed for the Boulevard tax rate. And it will raise approximately an extra $6,000 for a total of $221,000 in Boulevard taxes for 2021. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Are there any questions of council on this item? Not seeing any. I will then go to any members of the public who wish to speak. I don't see any logged into the Zoom app. So if anybody wishes to speak, please hit *9 at this time to raise your hand, and we will invite you into the meeting. I don't see anybody's coming in that way, so I'll just go to Ms. Williams. Ms. Williams, has anybody indicated they wish to speak to this bylaw?
No, Your Worship, nobody at this time.
Okay, then let's come back to our table. We have a live motion, the first and second reading on the table. Any other discussion? Not seeing any. I will call, oh, Councillor Patterson, sorry. Your hand must have gone off the screen there.
Sorry about that. It's getting late. I'm having trouble finding the controls here. But just a comment I feel is necessary to make. And I don't know that, I mean, it won't change anything, certainly relative to this bylaw as it's presented. However, I can't help but notice how beaten up looking so many of the boulevards are getting during pandemic because everybody's walking so far apart. And so certainly, you know, not immediately, but I would think that perhaps next year's budget or whenever we may have to allocate more funds because there's an awful lot of boulevards in the district that seem to have no green on them at all. There's a lot of there's just a lot of soil that gets pretty wet. So it's just an observation, but obviously the residents in the district are getting outdoors certainly throughout this time. And once again, it just illustrates how important our green space is, but the boulevards are definitely getting beaten up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we actually have a motion on the floor for this one? I don't think we have moved anything for this one, for the Boulevard.
You may well be right, Councillor Braithwaite. My apologies.
So
luckily, it doesn't destroy anything that we've done so far.
No,
the order of public input does not matter. So if you would really wish to move first and second reading, I'd appreciate that.
Actually, I'll move receipt of the report titled Boulevard Frontage Tax Rates Bylaw 2021.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Go ahead.
And then I'll move first and second reading of the Boulevard Frontage Tax Amendment Bylaw number 4794 2021.
Seconded. Thank you. Now the motion is live on the table. Questions or comments are welcome at this time. Not seeing any, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. And can I get third reading?
Now I will move third reading of the Boulevard Frontage Tax Amendment Bylaw number 4794 2021.
Thank you. Seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Item number 9.4. Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is the alternative tax collection bylaw. Last meeting, Council directed staff to create such a bylaw that imposes 0% tax penalty on the business class for 2020. That would expire, or pardon me, for 2021. That would expire at the end of 2021. And it introduces provisions that eliminates the tax penalty on the homeowner grant portion of the current taxes if that homeowner grant is submitted prior to Labor Day. The due date and penalty amount, Council elected to keep those the same as under the general tax scheme. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. And again, if anybody from the public wishes to address us, this is the time to raise your hand or to call in and hit *9. Before we get to that, however, we will get to first and second reading. If we could have
I'll move first and second reading of the alternate tax collection scheme bylaw number 4795 2021.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm wondering, and I hope that some council will indulge me on this, but I'm just curious that I know that this word is used in the community charter, the word scheme, but I'm wondering if we can actually change it in the title to me, alternate tax collection scheme sounds like we're trying to cheat somebody or something like that. So I know in the broader scheme of things, it's not a big deal. However, I'm wondering if I might make an amendment to drop that word scheme or to strike the word scheme just from the citation in section 1, not throughout the whole bylaw, but just in the citation in section 1. So I'm not sure exactly how to go about making that amendment, but I could.
Sure, thank you. I just want to confirm with Mr. Payne that striking it from citation in section 1 is the appropriate place to make that change.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, that's the best and only place to strike that word. The rest of that reference in the bylaw has a legislative importance.
Yeah. So yeah, and I just, I mean, I don't know how my fellow councillors feel about it, but I just, every time I hear that, I just think people must think we're trying to cheat them or something. And I just would like to have it taken out of the title, out of the citation in section 1.
So I think the appropriate, since it's been moved and seconded, I'm just going to confirm with Ms. Williams, is a motion to amend to strike that word scheme from citation in section 1 appropriate at this time?
Yes, Your Worship. The resolution does have a mover and a seconder, so a motion to amend the resolution to remove the word scheme from the citation in section 1.
So I would make that motion.
All right, is there a seconder for that? I don't see a seconder.
Darn it. I don't like that word.
All right, well, that didn't have support, so thank you for raising the question, Councillor Braithwaite. Anything else? Nope. Councillor Zelka?
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Question through you to staff. If we ever in the future implemented, for example, a local area services tax scheme or a latecomers tax scheme that allowed us to raise funds in this alternative sort of way, would it be this bylaw that those taxes would appear in, or how would they be surfaced and made available to us?
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Mr. Payne, where do those sorts of things appear?
Your Worship, this bylaw really pertains to the application of due dates for the collection of taxes and the application of penalty to such taxes. A local area service tax would meet that legislative definition, and so this bylaw would apply to the imposition of a local area service tax. Latecomer is not a tax; it's more of an agreement between a developer and a municipality. So, so that would relate. But if we did implement a local area service tax, there is a very prescriptive legislative process to establish that. And so there would be a bylaw establishing that specific tax. But this bylaw and its terms would apply to that tax.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much. I'll leave that for now. Thank you.
Thank you. It's always nice to have questions asked and answered so thoroughly and competently. Thank you, Mr. Payne. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And just confirmation perhaps from Mr. Payne. It's my understanding that this year and going forward that the homeowner grant program will be administered by the province rather than the local municipal government. Is that correct?
Mr. Payne?
Through your worship, yes, that is absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see other motions or any other discussion here. So we have a motion on the floor right now for first and second reading. Is there any members of the public that have indicated they wish to speak, Ms. Williams?
Nobody has indicated at this point, Your Worship.
Okay, then. So back to this table, we have a live motion. Any other discussion? Scheme included. And all those in favor? Any opposed, not opposed? Can I get a third reading?
I will move third reading that the alternate tax collection scheme bylaw number 4795/2021 be given third reading.
And seconded. I see a hand up for seconding. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. Thank you very much. And I thought but I heard you say that. I thought that's a great idea. Let's get rid of that. But there we go. It's certainly good to be consistent as well with the Local Government Act on these things. So positives both ways. Item up number 10, there's no new business. So we're on to correspondence in section 11. We have correspondence from the City of Victoria. They've made written a letter and have made a request for us to, if we would do the same for a very specific advocacy. I will, I'm not sure if I should go to, is there anything that staff wish to introduce this? It's really just a letter of correspondence from another level of government. So we certainly need a motion to receive it formally, but also if there's any other pieces, we'll take that. Councillor Green, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm happy just to receive it. I just have to say that I think my own opinion is, and I don't know if others share it, this is outside our scope. I really believe it is. I also think it is an employee-employer relationship issue. It's a labor relationship, labor relations issue, but it doesn't belong at our table in my humble opinion. So I would certainly support receiving the letter. Thanks.
Councillor Green, I see a hand for seconding. And Councillor Braithwaite, did you wish to speak to it, or is that just a hand to second?
That's just a hand to second, and I would agree with Councillor Green's comments.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. We have 11.2 Capital Regional District Municipal Consent for bylaw number 4375. Mr. Payne, do you wish to give a brief overview of this? And I'm happy to fill in any blanks as required.
Sure, yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Capital Regional District is required to obtain consent from the participating municipalities for the borrowing that will proceed in respect of this service. The borrowing that is being requested the consent for is a part of the regional district's 5-year financial plan. They have received consent for much of the borrowing in that 5-year financial plan. This represents the remaining borrowing that they need to receive consent from. Absent of consent from participating municipalities, the regional district, I believe, would need to conduct an alternative consent process. I forget what exactly that's called. So yes, the regional district is asking for consent to proceed with borrowing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. And I can't remember the alternate something, and I can't remember the term for it either. Alternate approval process, I think is what it's called. I have Councillor Green, you have your hand up. Is that for this item or is that just remaining? Okay, remaining. Any other, Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And this may be a question for you, but I'm just wondering why, if we can have clarification on why the projects outlined in bylaw, what was it, 4375? Why they weren't included in the management plan originally? How one section was included and one wasn't. So was it that they were unforeseen at the stage that the first group were included?
Yeah, and my memory is a little vague on this one. As I recall, the original borrowing for the sewage treatment plant incorporated all of the aspects directly related to the core area pipes and the treatment plant itself. This is sort of phase 2 as they're doing some additional expansion of this out to new areas and some additional pieces. So it was my recollection of this has been part of the plan the whole time, that they've just staged it for those increases over the time. So the money that's been put aside for the capital piece has been included. That's the money set aside. There's double-digit increases to cover that piece that covers the capital and the interest. And so this is an authorization to do the borrowing to continue that process. But it's past the core and now expanding into some additional projects.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Chair, and this question may end up being for you. It makes it fairly clear in the letter from the CRD that the entire core area liquid waste infrastructure is being set up as one system. And that this funding is to, I guess, finalize a piece that has been left towards this end of our, now that the first part is done. With respect to one system, I just wanted to confirm, are these funds going to be used for putting piping in to bring sewage, for example, from the far end of the Western communities all the way into Esquimalt so that it can be treated at the one treatment plant? And the reason I ask this is that some of the discussions when this was, they were talking about the design, was possibly having a slightly distributed system where there would be a treatment plant out in the Western communities so they wouldn't have to pipe it all the way back to Esquimalt. If you could possibly clarify that, that'd be helpful.
That's correct. This is for the not all of the Western communities are part of the program, but there is still that intention of having all of the so there's quite a bit of the Western communities that is still on septic, but really the intention is to have everything carried into the single processing plant external to the peninsula, which has its own treatment facility.
Right. Is it possible in the future, if they wanted to change this plan for those parts of the Western communities that aren't on the system, for them to possibly have a hybrid system, or is this basically one system and that's it, where you're either in or you're on septic?
It's really a single system model that's going forward. For a number of reasons, but yeah, the volume of effluent and the residual waste management both sort of contribute to that request. It is possible, and certainly the as I said, the peninsula, which has its own treatment, is going to be looking at using their residuals into the residuals treatment. So the biosolids piece will be going into the regional portion as well.
Right. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Actually, we haven't. Can I just get a motion to receive? You don't have to read the whole thing, just a motion to receive.
I'll move receipt.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, not opposed. And then the motion is laid out here for consent.
I'll move that council consent to the CRD adopting bylaw number 4375 liquid waste management core area and Western Community Service Loan Authorization bylaw number 2, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion on this item? Go ahead, Councillor Zelka.
Thank you, Chair. I don't wish to. Oh, sorry, my cat out of here. Sorry. I don't wish to re-debate the whole question about sewage by the use of the sewage system and whether it was even necessary in the first place. I don't want to start that again. However, I do wish to ask, what would happen if this was not approved at this table?
Well, maybe Mr. Payne should probably answer that question, but it requires 2/3 approval. And if it doesn't meet that threshold, then as Mr. Payne suggested, it would go through the alternative approval process, which basically is like a negative billing. Essentially, you go out and you seek direct, if there's enough people in opposition regionally, then that would fail. Otherwise, it would get the approval. So this process allows for feedback from the various councils if there's any thoughts or concerns or other aspects, usually related more to more controversial stuff than this, I would say, but it provides that opportunity through this process. But I don't know exactly what the threshold is under the alternate approval process, and it would certainly have no guarantee of success under that model either. I guess ultimately, if the capital wasn't approved, then the work couldn't get done at the end of the day, or they would have to save up money until they could put enough money aside. But Mr. Payne, is there anything else that I've missed in that answer?
No, Your Worship, that's a good answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I'll have to be voting against this. I just can't support it at this point. I need to see more details for me to consider approving this funds at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zelka. Any other comments, questions? Not seeing any. I will call the question then. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Zelka opposed. Thank you very much. That passes. This is that brings us to adjournment. And
move adjournment.
Moved and seconded. I just want to express my appreciation tonight. Everybody was very very good about asking concise questions and having very thoughtful but quick debate, and I really appreciate that. There's a lot of items on this agenda to get through, not always easy, and so thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. And with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We are adjourned. Have a great evening, everyone. And we'll see you on.
I wanted to apologize for being late at the first meeting. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
it's all good. Thank you, Councillor. Have a good evening.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.